Hello, role-playing people, and this episode is a quick reply to one of our listeners, Tad Sucks, who is curious about tips or advice on how to play as a Tzimisce in a Camarilla city, and some lore on Camarilla Fiends, if such lore exists. Hello, Tads, I hope you're enjoying your stay in the old country. Let me get right to the topic at hand and say, even if there are no known Tzimisce in the Camarilla, within the internal history of the vampire setting, mainly in Dark Ages vampire, we see there is quite some diplomatic interaction between fiends and other clans, long before the formation of the sects as they are known today. The Council of Ashes, frequently considered a precursor to the Camarilla in Transylvania, is an alliance which comprises of Ventru, Gangrel, Nosferatu, and Tzimisce princes. There are even two Tzimisce princes in this coterie, if we can call it that, mainly Radu of Bistrița and Dragomir Basarab of Alba Iulia. We know the Salubri found a haven in the lands of the Tzimisce after the Tremere began their purge. We know the Dracon made a lovely little nest for itself in Constantinople, forming a love triangle with the Ventru Antonius and the Toreador Michael. The Inconuu coterie of Hunedoara, hosted by Danica Ruthven, includes La Sombra, Setite, Malkavian, Salubri, Ventru, you name it. What I want to say with this is that independent Tzimisce characters and independent factions have always interacted with various other clans, as well as can be expected. In modern times, the majority of fiends have joined the Sabbat, which means a lot of their new embraces are raised into pack culture. They are taught that this is their family, this is their sect, everyone else is a tool of the antediluvians, right? They are militant and more often than not indoctrinated into inhuman paths of morality to the point that they cannot blend in with mortals. Sabbat packs are not exactly known for diplomacy, for use of mortal assets, or the ability to masquerade as normal, as humane, which is why they'd have a very difficult time even making diplomatic contact with the Camarilla, let alone joining that community and becoming part of it, being considered part of it. It's very unlikely that a younger Cainite who actively presents themselves as Sabbat or behaves as Sabbat is going to be welcomed into a Camarilla city and given domain. Right? And this automatically forces the character into hiding, into laying low, constantly being under the radar of the local Kindred, which prevents them from expanding their network, domain, haven, retainers, and so on. So if you want to play as a Tzimisce in a Camarilla city without making them a double agent or a Sabbat infiltrator, if you want to play as a Tzimisce who presents themselves as such, it's so much better to lean into the Independent Voivode archetype. Independent Fiends have been around for a very long time. Some of them have even preserved their humanity if we look at figures such as Danica or Dracula, and what's really helpful here is precisely that. They're independent. They don't owe allegiance to a fanatical sect with an anti-Camarilla ideology, which is by default going to be vilified by everyone in the city. The old Voivodes, the very few remaining Dracons, and the more recent Oradea League, a group I constantly forget about for some reason, so factions which aren't directly aligned with the Sabbat or even oppose the Sabbat in the case of the Oradea League, these work perfectly. As we can see in the clan novels, independents who are aware and mindful of the traditions honor the prince's domain, present themselves before the prince, and request permanent or temporary residence within a Camarilla city, they are frequently welcome unless the prince has very strict policies in this regard. So after we've chosen our Tzimisce's faction or our Tzimisce's sire's faction, everything comes down to presentation and strategy. How do you introduce and present yourself in a way that doesn't immediately horrify everyone and make them want to destroy you? The most metagame, meta-build advice I want to start off with is consulting with your storyteller. If they are open to the idea of allowing a Tzimisce character, then that's great, and you know they're also going to help you make the protagonist work and not kill you immediately. Even though in-game, everyone is going to be on guard, if not actively hostile, to your dragon character. And this is the part where I strongly recommend playing an older, more experienced protagonist who has access to financial and mortal resources, and if not, make sure your protagonist's sire, who is treated as a mentor, is old and powerful and willing to back up its progeny. Do not, under any circumstance, present yourself as a bloodthirsty monster who makes temporary havens in abandoned buildings and casually turns people into chairs on Friday evening, because you're just going to create tension in the city and draw an insane amount of mistrust. Any sane prince cannot afford to take the huge risk of allowing such a monster onto their domain. Instead, present yourself as a voivode, as someone who is skilled in the ways of ruling, a man of the world, as they're called. Someone who is experienced enough to understand the importance of mortal assets and discretion. Make sure your appearance at the point of entering the prince's domain is pleasant and, well, for lack of a better term, normal, if slightly eccentric or opulent. But do not fleshcraft yourself third eyes, wings, or whatnot. Show that even if you don't come from a place where the Masquerade is enforced and it is a rule, you understand the importance of it for this community and are willing to respect the rules of your host in their house and domain. This is where the Tzimisce's pedantries regarding ownership, land, and hospitality are so in your favor, because the Fiends understand rules, traditions, procedure, and so on, even if they don't absolutely agree with the rules, but they can respect them. Make sure you show the utmost respect for the prince's domain and be very polite towards the inhabitants until you are officially welcomed in the city. Which brings us to, how do you announce your presence? Simply walking about in a new city in which Kindred have every reason to fear and destroy your clan, or waltzing into Elysium hoping you'll make it out alive at the end of the encounter, is very risky. Don't do that. Make use of mortal retainers, contacts, and allies to locate Elysia in the city, to announce your intention of residing in this place, at least temporarily, while you handle some personal business, and have your heralds introduce you properly, mentioning your name, legacy and genealogy, current situation, assets, and talents that might make you a valuable resident in the city, if you're willing to flex a little without giving away too much, and showing everyone that they themselves, the ones who presented you, your servants and heralds, are not deformed monsters, but individuals who are well taken care of. The beauty of this approach is that you can initiate the proceedings and the diplomacy even before the protagonist itself arrives in the city. And this illustrates your character's non-threatening intentions, as well as the ability to socialize and play the Jyhad as well as any member of the Camarilla. If your servants cannot make significant contact with the Camarilla in a way that at least confirms that the prince would be okay with you being there, another slightly riskier strategy is to just have your retainers buy you land, a haven in a remote and uninteresting place, and just move into the city hoping to present yourself before the prince as quickly as possible. Like I said, It's risky, it requires a bit of laying low, but this approach can also work. Now, this next piece of advice is valid for both neonates and older characters, regardless of status. Always bring up your powerful sire, or your sire's sire. Lean hard into your lineage as a non-Sabbat Tzimisce and the historical existence of diplomatic relations between the Independent Fiends and other clans. The last thing you want is to present yourself as a threat. Be polite, be the voice of reason, and always have a reason for being in a city, whether it's personal or at the request of your sire, while reassuring everyone that your business will in no way interfere with the Masquerade and the status quo of the city. Make it perfectly clear that you are willing to respect the prince's authority and domain. If possible, emphasize all the ways in which you can help, ways in which your character might be valuable to the city throughout their stay. The Tzimisce I'm playing right now took the second approach, bought property in the city and used her retainers to present her intentions of settling here after the fact. Luckily, the prince did not take this as an affront. She declared her respect and understanding of the traditions in writing in a letter her servants gave the prince, and didn't hesitate to be open about the fact that she is here investigating a matter that is important to her grandsire, Danica Ruthven, the mistress of Hunedoara. This approach usually does two things. One, it tells the prince that you're not exactly on top of the food chain, but you are working for someone. And as such, you're not a big threat. You're not necessarily operating out of your own volition. Thus, you might not even know exactly what your sire wants, what its endgame is. And two, it encourages a diplomatic exchange while making it perfectly clear that your sire or grandsire is very powerful, and if anything happens to you without good reason, there will be hell to pay. Like, once the deal is made, if you are welcomed into the city, that's it, signed and sealed. No one gets to change their mind about you being there unless you violate the terms of the agreement. That's why it's so important to present yourself in a way that makes it clear to everyone that they have nothing to gain by being hostile, and you will honorably hold up your end of the deal. All you want is residence in the city. That's it. Should they offer you hospitality and subsequently change their mind for no good reason, yeah, make sure you give them hell. But more on the hell part later. Another option for players who don't want to play older experienced characters is to present your Tzimisce as a refugee, as a runaway from an independent, monstrous and abusive sire. In this case, you are playing on the Kindred's humanity, right? A virtue the majority of Camarilla still uphold, and again, as a runaway, you're projecting this image of vulnerability. You are not threatening. You are throwing yourself at the prince's mercy, hoping for some good old Camarilla compassion. But once the introduction phase is successful, you're ready to move into your new place. Make sure your haven allows for privacy, your servants are on their best behavior, and the neighborhood isn't suddenly flooded with missing persons cases. Keep your residence and your hunting grounds separate, and if your form allows it, feed in Elysia or in places everyone acknowledges as feeding areas. Aha! But your Tzimisce might be a dragon who's interested in ascetic practices, a metamorphosist whose form must be altered from night to night. Such behaviors aren't exactly compatible with humanity or coterie life, if anyone decides that you should be part of a coterie, whether you like it or not. So in this case, set boundaries. Make it clear to everyone that you will need privacy and time for yourself, even though in times of need you will jump to the aid of your prince or coterie. If they ask why do you need the private time, tell them the truth. Because your ascetic practices involve horrifying shape changing, which can be a risk to the masquerade if done or displayed in public, and a risk to others' sanity if witnessed directly by people who are not initiated. You cannot go clubbing with your coterie or have them over for a quick chat if you've decided to meditate upon isolation and agony by sealing your mouth shut, sewing your eyes closed, and opening up your thorax and abdomen for the rest of the night, possibly flaying certain parts of your body as well to test your control over your vitae by not letting a single drop spill throughout this entire ordeal. Maybe you've decided to test your skill with vicissitude by temporarily becoming a replica of, Cyndi Lauper for a while. They probably shouldn't see you like that, not just for your sake, but for theirs. So scheduling is essential here. If your coterie wants to do group activities, they will have to let you know in advance and respect your privacy. Make it clear that as long as you get enough private time, your schedule is malleable, you will keep nights open, and you will always make time for important events. Alright, next on my list is offer your services and be good at what you do. Probably the easiest thing to offer is aesthetic, cosmetic vicissitude modifications, starting with the second dot of vicissitude, fleshcraft. Really, all it takes is for that one toreador to ask for a permanent tattoo or permanent makeup and waltz into Elysium showing off those long-lasting, very tasteful modifications you've made before others come to your door looking to make a cosmetic change. Some kindred weren't embraced in the best conditions. They might have permanent wounds, scars, deformities. Others might need a little boost in their interactions with mortals, right? A boost in their ability to hunt and make retainers. Traditional appearance-enhancing techniques can only do so much for living corpses, and they are costly and ephemeral. But appearance is such an important part of humane hunting, socializing, clubbing, seduction, what have you. This is perfect because your Tzimisce offers solutions that are long-lasting and less artificial looking, depending on their skill, of course. Anything from rosy cheeks to an overall visage that looks alive, from fuller, longer hair to changes in pigmentation, or even various minor plastic surgeries. For kindred who are cursed to wake up every night looking exactly as they did on the night of their embrace, this is a blessing. This is the only chance they have at making a visible, long-lasting change. Obviously, if you botch and don't offer the service you promised, you probably will end up a pile of ashes. But again, play the honorable voivode card. Deliver what you promise. Don't give anyone reasons to fear and doubt you more than they already do because of your clan. But maybe you don't want to play into vicissitude too much. No problem. Tzimisce has many things to offer, from exceptional traditional craftsmanship, jewelry making, dressmaking, leatherworking, etc., to contemporary gunsmithing. Maybe you decide to take the Revenant Disciplines merit, in which case your fiend might make an exceptional intel gatherer, an obfuscated stalker, a brain-wiping dominate-using protector of the Masquerade, or even a seer or a consultant regarding occult matters, if you're willing to play a Koldoon. There are many ways, mundane or supernatural, in which Tzimisce can use their talents to keep themselves in the game. If, however, the local Camarilla tries to swindle you, hurt you, or disrespects their agreement intentionally in any way that is to your detriment, give them hell. You are a voivode, you are a dragon, and while you can play ball in the Camarilla Jyhad, play by the rules and respect the traditions, you are nobody's fool, and you sure as hell don't absolutely depend on their city. And this is where we talk to our storyteller again, giving them a heads up, asking them if they are okay with our course of action, if they are willing to play it out at the table. If they are not, we can say the character withdraws, they become an NPC, or whatever, they simply flee the city. But, if possible, do not leave the city without really letting the Camarilla have it. Destroy everything from Kindred's reputations and relations to their precious Masquerade. Poison their herds, shape them into horrors, turn everyone against everyone, whatever it takes. Scorched earth. You are like the dragon who swoops down and burns this whole village to cinders before flying off and never looking back. As a shaper, you can always take on another appearance or identity and slip away unseen, even if you, sadly, leave your servants in Haven behind. As a Koldoon, even better, the elemental spirits are on your side. Fires, floods, earthquakes, all of these are tools of your vengeance, if need be. And if the storyteller is excited about this idea, if you are willing to end the game with a bang, well, the character might do all of this, and if everyone is on board, maybe you can play the villain for the next 1-2 sessions. Having a really nice character versus character fight, as your coterie is probably tasked with destroying you. Or maybe they decide the Camarilla really is full of hypocrites who broke the accord between you and the prince, so they join your rebellion. There's a lot of ways this can go, depending on what the group is on board with. But without continuing on hypothetical endgames, this is how I'd play a Tzimisce in a Camarilla or an Anarch game. Well, it's actually how I'm already playing a Tzimisce in a Camarilla game. To sum it up, it's all in the presentation, because historically a lot of clans have had diplomatic relations with the Fiends. No matter how alien or monstrous the character is in secret, present them to the Camarilla as a person of the world, an honorable, polite creature who understands the importance of rules and procedures, perfectly capable of trade and diplomacy, someone whose lineage has tradition, whose genealogy has importance, who is an independent themselves, a Dracon, Oradea League, or Inconuu, or who is an agent of a powerful independent sire who might have been well disposed towards the Camarilla throughout history. So, a vampire who surrounds themselves with mortals, allies, contacts, and herd, thus showing they are socially adept, and their personal dealings will in no way endanger the Masquerade, the status quo, and, well, overall, all of the Camarilla traditions in the city. And of course, in privacy, in the comfort and safety of their haven, the character can be exactly the way you want them to be. But publicly, be the gentleman voivode. Offer your services, be good at what you do, and never ever, ever hesitate to destroy those who disrespect or trick you in any way that is more suitable, from social assassination by releasing some very compromising information about your target, completely ruining their reputation with the local Camarilla, to outright destruction after prolonged agony in your underground dungeon. Anyhow, This is probably the most reasonable way of gaining entry and being tolerated in a Camarilla city for a character who actively presents themselves as Tzimisce and wants to be known as such. But of course, there are always double agents and impersonators, fiends who might present as Malkavian, especially those who were embraced from the Obertus Revenant line, since those get Auspex and Obfuscate as Revenant disciplines, or Oprichniki Revenants who might disfigure themselves and present as Nosferatu, since they get Animalism and Obfuscate besides Vicissitude, the Grimaldi who might present as Ventru because of Dominate and Fortitude, etc. But a supposedly former Sabbat Tzimisce just showing up and asking to join, now that I don't see being tolerated in a Camarilla city unless some very special circumstances apply. I don't think any experienced prince is going to take a chance with a Sabbat apostate whose almost entire clan has been anti-Camarilla since the Convention of Thorns and known for what is probably zero regard for the Masquerade. However, this is only my take on the situation, and again, as long as the player and the storyteller work together, anything is possible. I hope the answer is reasonable, helpful, and to your liking, Tads. And as always, thank you everyone for listening. Take care, have fun, and don't forget to play.